This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Good evening, I'm Dennis Wolfering. Marcia is off tonight. There's no more speculating about who will be running to govern the city of New Orleans now that qualifying has ended. We will look at some of the key races and at a key factor, voter demographics. Also drawing attention is the effort to understand the implications of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, especially health care and the state's policy on Medicaid. We'll also look at the recent Essence Festival and some of the successes and some of the issues. Plus, during the summer, the condition of the Lake Pontchartrain, is always an issue. Facing these issues are our informed sources: Errol Laborde, producer, Informed Sources; Dawn Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter; Will Sutton, columnist for the Times-Picayune, New Orleans Advocate; Quin Hillyer, also a columnist for the Times-Picayune, New Orleans Advocate. Qualifying for the city elections in the fall has ended, and Errol, what can you tell us about the candidates we'll be choosing among, and were there any surprises?
No, okay.
Really?
What happens, particularly when you do a show on a Friday and qualifying ends on a Friday, there's always that issue that maybe, sometimes at the last moment, somebody big's going to jump in that's going to make a difference. That hardly ever happens, okay? Any serious candidate before the last hour of qualifying has already organized the campaign, has already raised money, people knows who it is, and so
they go in the first 2 hours on the first day.
Yeah. And so I predict that anybody who qualifies today, we will not see on election night on the stands, but still we just got to be aware that the possibility that people jump in. I think in the sheriff, and so the three races, and there's also the council races, which we'll look at in following weeks, but the three major races to look at today, one is sheriff, where Susan Hudson, the incumbent, is qualified. Some people thought she might not. She's had a bad time lately with that escape. And even before the escape, that there was some questions about whether or not she'd run.
I think that was kind of a surprise for some people.
Yeah, but she kind of made it clear from the beginning that she would. It's still not too late to drop out, though. Okay, I mean, it could be it could be just to make a statement. They want to run, but it's still possible to say, look, for the good of the sheriff's office, we still got work to do, and so it's still a possibility. But it's going to be a difficult campaign.
I talked with her on Wednesday before because I heard about this party being held, and it's like during qualifying there are a number of parties and gatherings and all, but I heard about this one, and it's like, are you sure Sheriff Hudson's name is that? And it's like, but absolutely, because they had planned their own qualifying party, and so that got me on to check in. But I did say in May that don't count her out, that this suspension might be different. And when I talked to her on Wednesday, she said, I never intended to stop, just to step back and focus on the work.
And so she's in there, but it's going to be a tough race.
Yeah,
right?
very tough.
Okay. Yeah. The big one, everybody's well, the other two candidates, I think, what you could call as major candidates. One is Edwin Shorty, who's a constable from the Algiers district. There's two constables in the city, one representing the East Bank and the West Bank, and so he's the West Bank constable. And then Michelle Woodfork, who was really the first to qualify in this. She was an interim police chief. When there was a resignation, she served. There was talk that the mayor might appoint her to be a regular police chief. When she wasn't, that kind of caused some bad feelings. She's a relative of a former police chief, and so she's well known. So probably at this point, you might call her the front runner. So between Woodfork and Shorty and Susan Hudson and a guy named Ernest Lee. Now for mayor, of course, the people talking about
There's Julian Parker. Julian Parker for sheriff as well, former criminal court judge.
Right. For mayor, if you look at the polls during these last few weeks, Helena Moreno has been leading. It's been seen as pretty much a race between Helena Moreno and Oliver Thomas. Oliver Thomas is a councilman, former council member at large, and at one time, a few years ago, was seen as a definite contender for mayor, and then he kind of ran into legal problems. But it was seen as those two as being the major contenders. Arthur Hunter, who's a retired criminal court judge, has been in all the time, and Royce Duplessis, who's a state legislator, has joined in. And also, I think, kind of a political family, Eileen Carter, and she made news when they had that recall effort.
That's right.
She was in charge of the recall effort. Her father was Quin Carter, who was a longtime political activist with the Bold organization, and so she does have some political connections. And then the other race we're looking at is the council at large. Because Helena Moreno is running for mayor, she's not running for re-election to her seat. There's two council at large seats, but the other is the incumbent is still there. But for what would have been Helena Moreno's seat, we have Matthew Willard, Delisha Boyd, who's a state representative from the West Bank, and Matthew Hill. Those would be the best-known people so far.
All right.
According to the race.
Voter demographics have changed quite a bit since Dutch Morreale was elected the first black mayor of New Orleans. Will, what can you tell us about how those demographics might affect this year's mayor's race?
Well, in the days of Dutch, and I was a young man then, and watching elections, but back then, the black community in New Orleans was very interested in having us represented in the mayor's seat and elsewhere. So at that time, to have 95% of the black community, black voters, vote for Dutch was not unexpected. It was really a matter of how much of the black community would turn out, and they turned out very strongly for him. Fast forward to more recent years, and there are more opportunities and there are more black candidates running for multiple offices. So when you have more black candidates running for multiple offices, and they're not just an addition and might get 1%, then you're going to have that natural black vote split. But then, in more recent years, you've got savvy politicians who realize that that's a block of votes, important votes, that I can cater to. And so then there's a different kind of split, and you can get a white candidate who is attracting black voters. So quickly I'll point to the mayor of Detroit, very black Detroit, is white.
Well, I think
How did that happen?
Mitch Landrieu proved that here, too.
That's right.
He certainly, he did not get elected without black support.
Well, even before that, the real transition figure was Mitch's dad, Moon Landrieu.
Absolutely.
When he was elected, because he was white, but he was the last white mayor, but before Mitch came along, to be elected, but with a majority of the black vote. And so, and it's the first time that the person got a majority of the black vote was elected, and then he went to serve 2 terms, and then he went to transition to Dutch Morreale and then the city of Bartholomew. So it was black candidates that got elected since then, with the exception of Mitch. And that part had to do a little bit with Katrina and the redistribution of the vote, too.
But it's also worth noting that even all along, the candidate that has usually won has been the one that has been able to pull off the greatest number from whatever that person's opposite race is. For instance, the first vote I ever cast in my life was for Dutch Morreale 3 days after my 18th birthday. And people, and Ron Fauché, who was his opponent then, has long since become a friend of mine. But Dutch Morreale got elected not just because of the black vote, but because there were people willing to look past and to cross over.
How does the white woman aspect for Helena factor into any of it? Because we haven't seen a white woman mayor.
I think the women vote is going to be a big factor. So one of the things that you have to give Helena Moreno credit for is over the years, she's built support across the city and across geographic and age groups. And that includes black women. So all she needed to do was say, I'm running, and it's like, I'm with you from a group of black women.
And there are two
Then-
factors besides name and face recognition. One is the women's vote, which is a powerful force. Also, she's Hispanic. Okay. Now, she's not Hispanic the same way that the Hondurans are. Okay.
Oh, sure.
But she's part of that culture. In fact, I was in the Uber, and the driver was Hispanic. He was asking, "How's something in Moreno going to do?" And so it's obviously something that means something in the Hispanic community too.
Absolutely.
Which is obviously a lot larger community now than it was before Katrina.
And the black vote percentage is shrinking, right?
It is. So just in terms of a population, just a few years ago, we were 67% of black population of the city, and then 61%, and then high 50s, and we're down to 50 to 52. That's just the population. That's not registration.
Right.
So then when you look at the registration, then it's a matter of who's registered and who votes.
Right.
And so there's a smaller percentage of that black registered voter base that is consistently voting in recent years.
All right. President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill has been met with a lot of concern about Medicaid and SNAP food assistance benefits, especially here in Louisiana, where we have the second highest percentage of residents on Medicaid. But Quin, you say that we shouldn't be that concerned about what's going to happen here in Louisiana.
Yes, we should not be as concerned as maybe we thought we should have been just 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Partly because of some last-minute language added in on the Senate side, mostly by Senator Bill Cassidy of Baton Rouge. But won't get into the philosophical arguments for and against what was done, but it is absolutely crucial to understand the 28 words added by Bill Cassidy mean that some applications Louisiana had in the pipeline already, but that had not been approved, now can still be approved. And what that means is we can draw down federal funds at a faster rate than we have already been drawing them down. And what that could mean over the next couple of years is an extra $2 billion for Louisiana that would not have been there if it weren't for those 28 words. That $2 billion will go a long, long way to easing whatever bad effect there was on Louisiana from the bill.
But they were talking about as many as 267,000 people would be thrown off of Medicaid here in
Probably
Louisiana.
not anymore.
Okay. So how many now would be thrown off?
That's depending on who you talk to, and you get a bunch of different opinions. Part of that is based on taking the total number of people that would be affected by the work requirements. And as it turns out, it's not very likely that anywhere near that many people will get thrown off of Medicaid entirely by work requirements, and of those that do, a reasonable minority of them will actually have expanded options for private insurance.
Okay.
So again, both sides are actually overestimating. The left is overestimating the pain. The right has been overestimating the savings.
Okay.
So that means that federally, the deficit and debt will actually go up by a lot more than Republicans are claiming.
Okay. So part of it is that the Democrats, correct me if I'm wrong, are guesstimating how many people won't meet the requirements for signing up more often, a number that we really don't know.
Right, but just to be clear, the new requirements apply only to people who are above the poverty line, only to people who do not have dependents under 18, only to people who are not caretakers, and only to people who are able-bodied. So suddenly, you're talking about a much smaller population than everybody thought.
Based on this provision inserted by Cassidy?
No. That was there all along.
Okay.
It's just that it wasn't as well understood. But the provision by Cassidy allows us to draw down funds through something. I won't get into all the wonkiness, but through something where the feds basically gave us money to match what the state gives to managed care organizations.
Hospitals and that kind of
Well,
rural
that's
hospitals?
a different thing.
Okay.
We actually do better on that as well than it looked like just 2 weeks ago we would do.
So let me ask you this. So in 2 or 3 years, will we feel this huge impact that people are talking about after we go through this process?
The impact won't even start until about 3 years because the work requirements don't start until the end of 26, and the other stuff is pushed back until 2028. That's when we'll start feeling it, and that's only if, in the meantime, the state hasn't figured out a way to mitigate the damage.
And if people don't have insurance and they go to emergency rooms instead, what will that do to the economy?
That won't be good. But because they put in these delays, and because they also got a big $50 billion national pot for rural hospitals, the rural hospitals most of them should be able to stay open, and that pot was not added in there again until about the last 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the lake. Lake Pontchartrain during the summer is always a big concern because people go out for recreation, swimming, boating, that kind of thing. Dawn, what have you found out about the condition of the lake?
That it's a far better place than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. As of 2006, it had been removed from the EPA's impaired waterways. It declared a healthier lake. If we go way, way back in history, from the early 1900s till about the time of World War II, it was seen as a healthy lake for recreation and fishing and that sort of thing. And as industrialization and urbanization increased, the pollution also increased, and the wastewater runoff and agricultural runoff started to hurt the lake. In the 70s and 80s, many of you remember the water quality really declined. Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation was founded in 1989 with a mission to clean up the lake. They have, as of last year, changed their name to the Pontchartrain Conservancy. They take full credit for having saved the lake. It is no longer a cleanup effort. It's an education effort. It's a sustained cleanup. But part of how they got that cleanup to happen is banning clamshell dredging in the lake, relocating Jefferson Parish and New Orleans Sewage and Water Board discharge into the lake, moving that over to the river, and public education and community cleanup efforts. So the Lake Pontchartrain Conservancy does do water quality testing. They test about 16 sites around the lake. As of last week's testing, which is the most recent, there were 5 beach areas or swim areas that are marked by them in red. The red means that there's too much enterococci, which is a bacteria found from both human and animal waste. It can be in runoff water. It can be just from rainwater that goes over farm fields or
Pesticides.
whatever. So there are 5 areas that are maybe considered you should avoid. But by and large, the lake is in a safe, healthy place. The science behind it, they're involving local schools and teachers and learning about water conservancy and cleaning up areas. And it's turned into a much happier mission than let's get it back to swimmable. It is back to swimmable in most places. And sometimes it's just the way our rain patterns and crazy summer storms happen that cause it to be unhealthy for a week or so. And then the system cleans itself.
What about alligators and that kind of thing?
We get bull sharks from time to time.
Really?
Yes, there have been bull sharks in the lake. There have been alligators in the lake. Sometimes those animals just need to be redirected. Sometimes it depends on the salinity levels. When the spillway is open from the river, everything changes a little bit. The salinity changes, and we see other wildlife right now. There haven't been any reports of scary things like that this
Let me
summer.
jump in for 20 seconds. Just say the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation, or the Pontchartrain Conservancy, is one of the most successful public-private foundation efforts that I have ever seen in my life. It has been spectacular. I can remember when it started, and the job that it faced was really massive. One other thing that it did, in addition to the shell dredging and the other stuff, was retention ponds or retention systems to keep the cattle runoff from coming down from the rivers north of Lake Pontchartrain and emptying into the lake, and that also helped.
Well, and to have this great resource in our backyard, too, for scientific research.
It's fantastic.
So, but it's good for swimming.
It's good for swimming in most places.
most
You
places.
can check. There is actually an app. Let me find the name of the app so I can get it right. I will get it for you. That you can check. But you can check Pontchartrain Conservancy and just look for their test sites to know before you go.
All right.
I remember a time when the alleys in Lakeview used to be filled with clamshells instead of concrete or bricks. It was clamshells, and you'd hear there'd be a rumble. And people thought, "Well, this is great. You know, you got the clamshell," not realizing that these clamshells are being dredged from Lake Pontchartrain, and that is killing Lake Pontchartrain.
We'll post that
It's
app
called
on.
it's called Lake and Coast.
What is it called?
Lake and Coast.
The annual celebration of Essence Festival always brings a huge crowd to New Orleans. It's a nice bounce for the local economy. But this year there were some issues people were concerned about. Will, what can you tell us about that?
Well, the truth is there have been issues off and on for years. So, you know, anytime you have a major event like that, if you have the Super Bowl, there's going to be something that happens. Maybe one year the lights go out. You can have a carnival parade and a wheel falls off. I mean, sometimes these things are unexpected. But what happened this year is that there were so many of these things, day to day to day and day to afternoon to night, that people were aggravated. Before I continue down that path, I do want to say there were thousands of people who had a wonderful Essence Festival experience. And as a friend of mine said just yesterday, I don't know where you all were, but I enjoyed myself. You know, so there were plenty of people who walked away happy, but there were so many complaints. And one of the things that I think is important is that this was elevated in a way primarily through social media, but also texting and calls and people talking with each other. So much so, and I don't think a lot of New Orleanians realize this became a national story. A national story.
Well, some of the problems were some of the acts didn't even finish until 3:37 in the morning.
Well, they didn't start at the scheduled start time.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that went viral. People had video of that.
Absolutely.
Lauryn Hill, I think it was, performing to an empty Superdome.
3:37 a.m.
Yeah.
So there were things like that. There also were problems with audio. There also were problems with programming in the daytime, something scheduled to start, and it didn't start at that time. And when you have a full day, that causes a backup.
There was no like militaristic control, but whoever was in charge.
Is, there has been. I'm going to put on my observer speculator hat since I am a columnist. When the Essence Festival plans year to year to year, and they have certain expectations of sponsorships, they can plan ahead and look at programming based on the sponsorships and ticket sales. They can look at the space and assess and evaluate the space. They can plan ahead in a number of ways. But when something as important as money surprises you, so for instance, we all know what happened in 2020 with George Floyd and our wonderful national and world awakening. And we know how quickly some of that dissipated in the last 2 years. A number of companies that have been supportive of the Essence Festival did one of two things. One, they said, we're not coming this year. Another, we're coming, but at a lower rate of sponsorship. What does that affect? Staffing. So if this job usually takes 4 people, but for the money you're giving me, I'm going to give you 1. Then that has a lot to do with it.
And one of your colleagues, Keith Spiro, said they had too many acts crowded in a couple of the nights, Friday and
I think one night it was like 8 or 10.
Yeah.
You know, now from the organizer's standpoint, that you have bought a ticket. We've told you late who's going to be on the show. And then we're adding people, and we're not asking you to pay more. So we're giving you added value.
And did they have
But-
any really big stars perform this year?
Well, there were some really big stars, but it's like big stars to whom, which is another part of the issue. Because if I say Jill Scott, Erykah Badu, if I say Maxwell, I could say Patti LaBelle. Those are different audiences.
Yeah.
When I say Gorilla, anybody? Okay, so there's a cultural, even
Right.
within the love that is Essence Fest.
Yes.
There are different age ranges and genre interests, and so that's a piece that perhaps Essence Festival will have to deal with, because we've grown with Essence Festival for more than 30 years now. So our baby is a grown adult.
Okay.
But what about the 18 to even 39?
Mm-hmm.
We should acknowledge, though, that they lost one of their legendary stars with Frankie Beverly.
Frankie Beverly, absolutely.
Frankie Beverly was the essence with the Neville Brothers, with the Jazz Fest. You know, they were always like the big local, the
Right,
big act,
right,
you know,
right.
closely with.
But all is not lost. I am hopeful. I am prayerful. I think this is going to work out. It's just that Essence Festival posted on Thursday a recap. Now, normally, if a corporation or big company posts something like that, these days it's like, can it fit on an Instagram post?
Okay.
That post takes 7 minutes to read.
All right. It's time to look ahead. Errol, what do you see in the week ahead?
Well, we'll talk about the qualifying. The date of the election is exactly 3 months from today. It's October the 11th.
Okay.
And so we're right at that period now. Qualifying's done. 3 months to do the business.
All right.
Yep.
Will, what do you see coming up?
I'm being edited at the moment. I have a column coming this weekend, and I have suggested next steps for Essence Festival.
All right.
Ah, fabulous.
Quinn, what about you?
I think people should really be paying attention to the turmoil on the East Bank Levee Board. And to be concerned about it. We are about to enter the height of hurricane season, and the governor has thrown a bunch of stink bombs in there, and it's really worrisome. And some of our flood walls are sinking at the rate of an inch a year.
Good point. Dawn?
Some science fun on the lake this weekend. If anybody wants to check it out, you can see underwater robots and all sorts of fun stuff at the Lighthouse Museum on the lake tomorrow from 12 to 4.
All right. Excellent. And that's Informed Sources for this week. Thanks to the panel. Thank you for joining us. And thank you at home for joining us. Take care.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.